Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel A Cosmic Connection. Ethan Parker stood in the doorway of his modest apartment, clutching the digital contract tablet with sweaty palms. Outside, the neon glow of the megalopolis painted his face in alternating hues of pink and blue. His art career was going nowhere, and his bank account had dwindled to double digits. This was his last resort. Please verify your consent to the Interstellar Housing Initiative terms by placing your thumb on the scanner, the tablet chirped. Ethan hesitated, then pressed his thumb against the screen. A soft beep confirmed his commitment. For the next 6 months, he would share his living space with a being from another world. The program promised to slash his rent by 70%, the only reason he'd even considered it. Congratulations, the tablet flashed. Your extraterrestrial roommate will arrive within the next 48 hours. That had been yesterday. Now Ethan paced nervously, his small apartment suddenly feeling both too empty and too cramped. He'd spent the morning frantically cleaning, though he wasn't sure what standards his new roommate would have. Would they even breathe oxygen? Need a bed? Eat food? The program briefing had been frustratingly vague, emphasizing only cultural sensitivity and open-mindedness. A soft melodic hum emanated from outside his door, growing louder until it settled into a gentle rhythm. 3 distinct knocks followed, each precisely 5 seconds apart. Ethan took a deep breath and opened the door. "Greetings, human-dwelling partner," came a voice like velvet over gravel. Standing before him was a tall, slender figure with midnight blue skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Iridescent markings traced elegant patterns along their exposed arms and across their high cheekbones, pulsing softly with each word. Large almond-shaped eyes, completely black except for pinpricks of white light where pupils should be, regarded him with unreadable intensity. "I am Vex, from the 4th moon of Callisto Prime," they said, extending a 6-fingered hand in what appeared to be an approximation of a human greeting. "Your officials have assigned me to this dwelling unit for my research duration." Ethan realized he was staring and quickly took Vex's hand. It was cool to the touch with a subtle vibration that sent tingles up his arm. "I'm Ethan. Ethan Parker. Human from Earth, which you know, obviously." He winced at his awkwardness. "Please come in." Vex glided into the apartment, their movements fluid and precise. They carried only a small metallic cube approximately the size of a shoebox. "Your atmospheric mixture is acceptable," Vex commented, their markings shifting to a greenish hue, "though I detect excessive carbon dioxide. May I adjust?" Before Ethan could respond, Vex placed the metallic cube on the floor. With a series of gentle taps against its surface, the cube expanded, unfolding into a crystalline structure that emitted a soft pulsating light. "This will balance the elements in your dwelling," Vex explained. "It also provides me with necessary mineral sustenance." "Oh, sure. That's convenient." Ethan watched as the crystal began to glow brighter. "So, research. What kind of research are you doing on Earth?" Vex's markings rippled. "I study emotional resonance patterns across sentient species. Humans are particularly fascinating. You experience emotions so individually. On Callisto Prime, emotions are collective experiences." "That sounds intense," Ethan replied, suddenly self-conscious about what emotions he might be projecting. "Indeed. Your privacy concepts are equally fascinating." Vex moved to the center of the living room and knelt, placing their palms flat on the floor. "I must attune to this space. Please continue your normal activities." Ethan stood awkwardly as Vex began to hum, the sound resonating at a frequency that made the windows vibrate slightly. The iridescent markings on their skin pulsed in sync with the humming, casting gentle waves of light across the walls. Over the next hour, Vex moved methodically through the apartment, performing what seemed like a ritualistic acknowledgement of each space. In the kitchen, they sprinkled a fine sparkling powder around the perimeter. In the bathroom, they placed a small singing bowl that emitted a continuous, barely audible tone. Outside Ethan's bedroom, they paused respectfully. "This is your private chamber, yes?" "That's my bedroom." Vex nodded solemnly. "I will not intrude. However, I must ask, may I place a resonance stone at the threshold? It will ensure harmonious dream cycles." "Ah, sure. Why not?" Ethan replied, increasingly bewildered by the whole situation. That night, as Ethan tried to sleep, he could hear Vex moving about the apartment, their humming occasionally rising and falling like distant waves. The resonant stone outside his door emitted a soft blue glow that seeped under the crack, casting strange shadows on his ceiling. He wondered what he had gotten himself into. The program coordinator had emphasized that all alien participants were thoroughly vetted for compatibility with human lifestyles, yet nothing had prepared him for the reality of sharing his space with someone who literally communed with his apartment. As his consciousness began to drift, Ethan felt an unusual warmth spreading through his body, as if he were floating in perfectly heated water. His last thought before sleep claimed him was that the stone Vex had placed was definitely doing something. He dreamed of stars exploding into life, and somewhere in that cosmic dance, a pair of black eyes with pinpricks of light watched him with infinite curiosity. 2 weeks into their cohabitation, Ethan woke to find the living room transformed. Vex had arranged dozens of crystal formations in concentric circles around a central platform made of what appeared to be liquid metal suspended in midair. The air smelled of something between cinnamon and ozone. "Morning," Ethan mumbled, stepping carefully between the crystals. "Redecorating." Vex markings pulsed rapidly, a response Ethan had come to recognize as excitement. "I am preparing for the alignment of inner stars. It occurs once every 37 Earth days and requires proper ceremonial space." Ethan nodded as if this explained everything. Living with Vex had quickly become an exercise in accepting the inexplicable. He'd grown somewhat accustomed to their daily meditation sessions and the strange foods they consumed, luminescent spheres that hummed until eaten, but the apartment alterations were becoming increasingly elaborate. "I'll just grab some coffee and head to my studio," Ethan said, skirting the edge of the crystal formation. "Actually," Vex said, their voice dropping to a reverential tone, "I was hoping you might participate in today's ceremony." Something in their voice made Ethan pause. Participate? How exactly? The alignment requires dual energy signatures to properly manifest. On my world, all dwelling partners would naturally join. Vex markings shifted to a soft amber, a color Ethan hadn't seen before. "But I understand if it conflicts with your human customs." Ethan hesitated. He'd been keeping a polite distance, treating their living arrangement as a strictly practical matter, but curiosity, always his downfall, tugged at him. "What would I need to do?" Vex markings brightened considerably. "Simply sit opposite me in the inner circle. The rest will occur naturally." Naturally, Ethan echoed, but found himself agreeing despite his reservations. That evening, Ethan sat cross-legged across from Vex, surrounded by crystals that now emitted a low pulsating hum. The floating metallic platform between them had begun to spin slowly. "Place your palms upward, like this," Vex demonstrated. "Now close your eyes and attune your breathing to the crystal resonance." Ethan complied, feeling slightly ridiculous but determined to be open-minded. For several minutes, nothing happened except the gentle humming growing incrementally louder. Then he felt it, a warm sensation spreading from his palms upward, as if invisible threads were connecting to his fingertips. Behind his closed eyelids, colors began to swirl unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "Vex, I think I'm seeing," he began, but his words cut off as a wave of emotion crashed through him, a profound sense of wonder mixed with an acute loneliness that brought tears to his eyes. "Yes," Vex whispered. "You're receiving emotional echoes. These are my home world feelings." The sensations intensified. Ethan felt as if he were simultaneously floating and sinking, his consciousness expanding beyond the confines of his body. Images flashed through his mind, a landscape of impossible geometric structures under 3 moons, beings like Vex moving in synchronized patterns, a sense of belonging so powerful it ached. When he opened his eyes, Vex was staring at him with an intensity that made his skin tingle, their markings rapidly shifting through colors he couldn't name. "You have remarkable receptivity," Vex said softly. "Most non-Callistans cannot process the emotional transfer." Ethan blinked, feeling strangely disoriented yet energized. "What just happened to me?" "We shared essence memory. It is intimate by my world's standards. I should have explained more thoroughly before beginning." That night, Ethan's dreams were more vivid than ever. He painted until dawn, producing work unlike anything he'd created before, swirling vortices of color that seemed to move when viewed from the corner of the eye. Over the following days, Vex rituals became increasingly focused on Ethan. They prepared strange aromatic baths for him with crystals that dissolved into the water. They placed their hands on his shoulders from behind while he painted, their touch sending currents of creative energy through him. They whispered words in their native language while he slept, words that somehow entered his dreams and transformed them into voyages across galaxies. Though he never explicitly agreed to any of it, Ethan found himself waiting for these moments, craving the sensations they produced. His art was transforming, taking on qualities that seemed to transcend normal human perception. Gallery owners who had previously ignored him were suddenly calling, fascinated by what they called his otherworldly perspective. "Your aura has expanded," Vex commented one evening, standing in the doorway of his studio. "It now extends 3 meters beyond your physical form." Ethan put down his brush. "Is that why I've been feeling different? More aware of everything?" "Partially," Vex replied, "but there is more. I must show you something tonight. It is time for the next phase." "Next phase of what?" Ethan asked, a mixture of anticipation and apprehension rising within him. Vex's markings pulsed with a deep violet light as they replied, "The bonding process. It has already begun between us, whether we intended it or not." The next phase involved a bathing ritual that left Ethan sitting awkwardly in his tub, surrounded by floating bioluminescent orbs while Vex prepared what they called essence oils in the living room. "These will enhance your receptivity," Vex explained, returning with a vial of iridescent liquid. Without warning, they poured 3 drops directly onto Ethan's chest. "Whoa!" Ethan gasped as the liquid seemed to sink directly into his skin, leaving trails of warmth that spread throughout his body. "A little heads up next time." Vex tilted their head, markings flashing in confusion. "I don't understand." "This is the standard preparation for the intimate resonance ceremony." "The what?" Ethan's voice cracked as he hastily grabbed a towel to cover himself. "Vex, we need to talk about boundaries. Human boundaries." Vex markings dimmed to a dull blue. "Have I violated a taboo?" Ethan sighed, clutching the towel. "Not exactly, but on Earth, we usually don't. I mean, roommates don't typically." He struggled to find the words. "Look, can we discuss this when I'm dressed?" 10 minutes later, Ethan sat across from Vex at their small kitchen table, still feeling the lingering warmth of the essence oils beneath his skin. "I believe I have misunderstood our arrangement," Vex began, their voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "On Callisto Prime, dwelling partners engage in regular harmonization rituals. It is not considered intimate in the way humans define intimacy." "What exactly are these rituals supposed to accomplish?" Ethan asked. Vex markings swirled thoughtfully. "They align our energy fields, allowing for optimal cohabitation. Without them, dissonance builds, causing discomfort and eventually illness." They paused. "I noticed your creative energy was blocked when I arrived. The rituals were meant to help clear these blockages." Ethan thought about his recent artistic breakthrough. "So all this, the crystals, the humming, the oils, it's like alien feng shui." "An imperfect analogy, but not entirely incorrect," Vex said, their markings brightening slightly. "However, there is something I should have explained earlier." They placed their 6-fingered hand palm up on the table. After a moment's hesitation, Ethan placed his hand atop it. Immediately, a warm current ran up his arm. "When compatible beings participate in these rituals," Vex explained, "a bond begins to form. This bond transcends physical proximity. It becomes permanent." Ethan withdrew his hand, alarmed. "Permanent? Like marriage?" "More profound than your marriage concept," Vex said. "It is a resonance at the quantum level. Your species might call it a soul connection." The revelation hung in the air between them. Ethan remembered the sensations during their shared meditation, the emotions that weren't his own flowing through him, the dreams of Vex's home world. "Are you saying we're already connected?" "The process has begun but is not complete," Vex said. "It can be halted at this stage with minimal discomfort to both parties." Something in their tone made Ethan pause. "Would that hurt you?" "Stopping it." Vex markings flickered rapidly. "It would be disappointing. But I would recover." Ethan studied Vex's face, trying to read the alien expressions he was only beginning to understand. "Why didn't you tell me this could happen?" "In my culture, it is understood that dwelling partners always conduct harmonization rituals. The possibility of bonding is acknowledged but rare, occurring only between deeply compatible beings." Vex's markings pulsed softly. "I did not expect our energies to align so perfectly." It is unprecedented between our species. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, processing this information. So all those times you were balancing the apartment's energy, or whatever, you were actually what, courting me? Not intentionally, Vex replied, though I cannot deny the pleasure I derived from our resonance. Your energy signature is beautiful. The compliment, so alien yet sincere, sent a flush of warmth through Ethan despite his confusion. He couldn't deny the connection he felt with Vex, something beyond physical attraction or even emotional compatibility. On my world, Vex continued, we believe that the universe occasionally brings together souls that enhance each other's existence. We don't choose these connections, we merely recognize them when they occur. Ethan thought about his art, how it had transformed since Vex's arrival, how he himself had changed, becoming more perceptive, more attuned to subtle energies around him, how he'd begun to look forward to Vex rituals, to crave the sensations they produced. What happens if we continue? He asked quietly. Vex markings shifted to a deep magenta. The bond strengthens. We would begin to sense each other's emotions regardless of distance. Eventually, we would share certain thoughts, dreams, and sensory experiences. And this is normal where you come from. It is rare and highly valued, Vex said. Those who achieve full resonance are considered blessed by the cosmos. Ethan leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. I need some time to think about this. Of course, Vex nodded, rising gracefully. I will dismantle the intimate resonance setup. As they turned to leave, Ethan found himself reaching out, catching Vex's wrist. The contact sent a cascade of tingling sensations up his arm. Leave it, he heard himself say. Just give me tonight to think. Vex's markings pulsed once brightly before they nodded and withdrew to their room. That night, Ethan lay awake, feeling the subtle pull of the crystals Vex had arranged throughout the apartment. He realized with startling clarity that he could sense Vex's presence on the other side of the wall, a gentle pressure at the edges of his consciousness, like a song heard from a distance. For the first time, he allowed himself to reach back across the connection, curious about what might happen. Immediately, a wave of relief and joy that wasn't his own washed over him, so powerful it brought tears to his eyes. Morning sunlight filtered through Ethan's window, illuminating dust particles that seemed to dance with newfound purpose. He hadn't slept yet felt more energized than ever. The decision he'd reached sometime during the night hours felt both terrifying and inevitable. When he emerged from his bedroom, Vex was sitting cross-legged in the center of their crystal arrangement, markings pulsing slowly. I'll do it, Ethan said without preamble. I want to continue the bonding process. Vex's eyes widened, pin-pricks of light expanding. You understand the permanence. The depth of what this means. Not entirely, Ethan admitted, sitting across from them. But I want to learn. I want to experience it. May I ask what changed your mind? Vex's markings shifted to a curious swirl of colors. Ethan thought of the moment last night when he'd reached across their nascent connection, how Vex's emotions had flowed into him like a warm tide. I felt something real between us. Something I can't explain in human terms. Vex extended their six-fingered hands, palms upward. Ethan placed his hands in theirs without hesitation this time. The next stage requires complete openness, Vex explained, their voice taking on a ceremonial quality. We will share memories, fears, hopes. It is not always comfortable. I'm ready, Ethan said, surprised by his own certainty. The ritual began simply enough, synchronized breathing while the crystals around them hummed at increasing frequencies. Then Vex began to sing, a haunting melody that seemed to bypass Ethan's ears and resonate directly within his mind. The room dissolved around him. He was suddenly standing on a crystalline plateau under 3 moons, feeling the solar winds against his skin. No, not his skin. Vex's skin. He was experiencing Vex's memory. The scene shifted. A younger Vex stood before a council of elders, their markings dim with shame. You seek knowledge forbidden to our kind, an elder's voice echoed. The emotional patterns of solitary species are not for us to explore. How can we claim cosmic harmony when we ignore half the sentient beings in the universe? Vex argued, their passion evident even in memory. Those who process emotions individually have just as much to teach us as those who share our collective experience. Your research threatens the very foundation of our society, another elder pronounced. You are given one cycle to abandon this path or face severance from the collective. The memory shifted again, and Ethan felt Vex's pain as they stood alone on a transport platform, exiled from their home world, determined to prove that individual emotional processing held value. "You left everything behind," Ethan whispered, opening his eyes to find tears streaming down his face. Vex's markings pulsed with soft blue light. "Now you understand why your species fascinates me. You feel everything alone, yet survive. More than survive, you create art from your isolation." "We're not meant to be so alone," Ethan said, suddenly understanding something fundamental about human existence. "That's why we search so desperately for connection." The ritual continued, deepening over hours that felt both endless and instantaneous. Ethan shared his own memories, his childhood passion for art, his parents' disappointment in his career choice, his growing disillusionment as gallery after gallery rejected his work. When they finally broke apart, the sun had set. Ethan felt physically exhausted yet mentally clarified, as if he'd been carrying burdens he hadn't recognized until they were lifted. "That was..." he began, but found words inadequate. "Yes," Vex agreed, understanding without explanation, their markings now pulsing in perfect synchronization with Ethan's heartbeat. "The bond is strengthening." In the days that followed, Ethan's perception transformed. Colors appeared more vivid, sounds carried emotional resonance he'd never detected before. His art exploded with new techniques that seemed to flow through him rather than from him. "Your creations now capture multiple dimensions simultaneously," Vex observed, standing before Ethan's latest canvas, a swirling vortex that seemed to pull viewers into its depth. "You are painting with quantum awareness." Ethan set down his brush, noticing how the paint particles danced with minute energy fields. "Is this how you see the world all the time?" "Similar, though your human perception adds unique elements." Vex moved closer, their body radiating a warmth that Ethan could now sense from across the room. "Our resonance creates something neither of us could experience alone." The physical changes were subtle but unmistakable. Ethan noticed faint iridescent patterns appearing on his skin when emotions ran high. Vex's markings had begun to pulse in patterns that mimicked human artistic compositions. They were changing each other in fundamental ways. Their living space transformed as well. The crystals that had once seemed like alien intrusions now felt essential, their harmonics maintaining a vibration that nourished them both. The boundary between Ethan's studio and Vex's meditation space dissolved as their creative processes merged. One evening, as they sat together in comfortable silence, Ethan noticed Vex's markings dim suddenly. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately sensing the shift in their shared energy field. "I received a communication from my home world," Vex said quietly. "The Council wishes to review my research findings. They are reconsidering their position on individual emotional species." "That's good news, isn't it?" Ethan asked, though he already sensed the complication through their bond. "They require my physical return within 14 Earth days," Vex said, their markings pulsing with conflicted emotions. "The journey takes 12. The implication hung between them, rippling through their shared consciousness. "You're leaving," Ethan said, feeling a hollow opening inside him. "Tomorrow." Vex reached out, tracing the faint iridescent pattern that had appeared on Ethan's forearm. "The bond we've created is unprecedented. I must show them what is possible between our species." "And after you show them?" Ethan asked, already feeling the phantom pain of separation. Vex's markings swirled with complex emotions. "That depends on their judgment, and on one final ritual we have yet to perform." "What ritual?" "The one that would complete our bond," Vex said softly, after which distance would be less consequential. Ethan felt his heart race. "Why haven't we done it yet?" "Because once completed, our essences become permanently intertwined," Vex explained. "If we were ever truly separated after that point, the consequences would be severe." "Define severe," Ethan pressed. Vex met his eyes directly. "Neither of us would ever be whole again." Dawn broke over the city as Ethan and Vex stood in the center of their apartment, now transformed into an elaborate ceremonial space. Crystal formations spiraled outward from where they stood, each pulsing with energy that resonated through the floorboards. The air shimmered with particles that drifted like stardust between them. "Are you certain?" Vex asked, their markings cycling through colors that expressed both hope and concern. "Once begun, this cannot be undone." Ethan looked at the being before him, no longer alien, no longer strange, but essential to his existence in ways he was still discovering. Through their partial bond, he could already feel Vex's anxiety about returning home, their determination to change their society's limited understanding. "I've never been more certain of anything," he said. "Whatever happens with the council, whatever distance separates us, I don't want to go back to not feeling this connection." Vex's markings brightened with emotion. "Then we begin." The final bonding ritual was unlike anything they had shared before. It began with Vex removing a small crystal from the center of their chest, a process that looked painful but that Vex assured him was natural for their species. The crystal pulsed with blue-white energy, containing what Vex called their essence core. "This contains the fundamental frequency of my being," Vex explained, holding it between them. "For complete resonance, I need something of equal significance from you." Ethan understood instinctively. He went to his studio and returned with his most prized possession, the first painting he'd ever sold, a small piece he bought back years later when he could finally afford it. The canvas contained all his hopes, fears, and dedication to his art. "This is my essence," he said simply. Vex nodded, understanding the symbolic weight of the offering. They placed the crystal against the canvas, where it began to melt into the paint, creating new patterns that swirled with living energy. What followed was a transformation that transcended physical sensation. As they stood facing each other, hands linked, the boundary between their separate consciousnesses began to dissolve. Ethan experienced Vex's childhood under 3 moons, felt the cold sting of exile from their collective, understood with perfect clarity why they had risked everything to study humans. In turn, he felt Vex moving through his memories, his lonely childhood filled with sketchbooks, his first heartbreak, the crushing disappointment of gallery rejections, and the soaring joy of creative expression. Their separate histories merged into a shared narrative, neither fully human nor fully Khalistan, but something entirely new. When the ritual reached its apex, the crystal formations around them shattered simultaneously, releasing a wave of energy that momentarily lifted them both from the floor. The painting floated between them, now transformed into something that defied physical laws, a canvas that displayed different images depending on the angle from which it was viewed, colors that existed beyond the human spectrum, and patterns that moved with conscious intention. As they returned to normal awareness, Ethan immediately sensed the difference. Vex's thoughts flowed alongside his own, distinct but accessible. Their emotions mingled like complementary colors, creating new shades of feeling he had no words for. "I can feel you," he whispered, reaching out to trace the markings on Vex's skin that now perfectly matched the faint iridescent patterns on his own body. "Even when I close my eyes, I know exactly where you are." "This is complete resonance," Vex confirmed, their voice simultaneously in his ears and his mind. "We remain separate beings, but our essences now exist in harmonic alignment." The knowledge of Vex's imminent departure still hung between them, but the desperation had vanished. Distance would be irrelevant now, they would remain connected across any expanse of space. "When you face the council," Ethan said, sensing Vex's lingering anxiety, "I'll be with you. They'll feel me through you." "That is precisely what they fear," Vex admitted. "And precisely what might change their understanding. If they can experience how our different forms of emotional processing can complement rather than threaten each other, then they might allow other Khalistans to explore connections with species like yours," Ethan finished the thought. They spent their final hours together in a state of paradoxical connection, physically present yet already experiencing how their bond would function across the void of space. When the transport arrived to take Vex to the spaceport, they embraced one last time, their energy fields merging visibly around them. 14 days until you face the council," Ethan said. "I'll be painting what you see, creating a visual record of your journey. And I will carry your human perspective with me," Vex replied, "the first of my kind to truly understand individual emotional processing." As Vex stepped onto the transport, Ethan felt no sense of loss, only a stretching of their connection, like a golden thread extending between them. Back in his apartment, surrounded by the remnants of their rituals, Ethan stood before a blank canvas. Closing his eyes, he reached across the newly formed bond, sensing Vex's ascent through Earth's atmosphere with perfect clarity. He saw the planet receding below, felt the mixture of exhilaration and determination as Vex began their journey home. His hand moved to capture the image, colors flowing onto the canvas with supernatural precision. Through their bond, he sensed Vex's approval and their shared excitement for this new form of creation, art that bridged worlds, emotions that transcended species. The painting took shape beneath his hands, Earth from orbit, but rendered with awareness of dimensional layers invisible to human eyes. In the corner, almost hidden within the swirling energy patterns, 2 forms of light intertwined, one human-shaped, one Khalistan, their essences forever aligned despite the growing physical distance between them. In the stars between their worlds, new possibilities awaited. The Council might accept or reject Vex's research, might welcome or exile them permanently. It hardly mattered now. Through their cosmic connection, they had already transcended the boundaries that separated their kinds. Ethan stepped back from the completed painting, feeling Vex's consciousness brush against his across the void of space, a touch that felt like coming home. "Safe travels," he whispered, knowing Vex would hear him no matter how far the stars stretched between them. "I'll be waiting, across any distance." Through their bond, the answer came immediately, not in words but in a pulse of emotion that needed no translation: "We are never truly apart again." As night fell over the city, the iridescent patterns on Ethan's skin glowed softly in the darkness, pulsing in perfect rhythm with a heart that orbited a distant star, bound to his own by forces stronger than gravity.